Samantha adjusted the collar of her thrift store blazer for the 5th time, willing it to look more expensive than it was. Her heart was racing in her chest as she stood outside the elegant Italian restaurant downtown, staring up at the golden sign that read Lasciuria. The irony wasn't lost on her, lust of all things. What the hell was she doing here? She only had $20 in her wallet. She hadn't been on a proper date in years, let alone a blind date, and certainly never in a place where the menu didn't even show the prices. She knew it was a bad idea. But desperation had its own rhythm, and hers was playing a painfully loud beat lately. Her roommate Gina had insisted. "You need to put yourself out there, Sam. Just one date. One night. Maybe she's the one." Samantha had laughed. "With my luck, she'll be a catfisher with a felony record and a gluten allergy." But now she was here, dressed in her best Goodwill combo, clutching a $20 bill like it was a golden ticket. If she ordered a glass of water and pretended to be full, maybe she could survive this. Or maybe her date would be cool. Down to earth. Someone who didn't care that her shoes had been duct-taped 3 times, or that her last meal was 2 packets of instant ramen. She stepped inside. The warmth and elegance of the place wrapped around her like silk, and instantly she felt out of place. The maitre d' barely glanced at her before asking for the reservation name. Samantha," she said, her voice trembling. "Table for 2. It might be under Becca? Rebecca, maybe?" The man checked the list, then gave a tight smile. "Right this way." Samantha followed him, ignoring the judgmental eyes of the high-class diners, their designer suits and clinking wine glasses. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. Her seat was in the center of the room, painfully exposed. She slid into the chair, heart hammering, and checked her phone. 7:02. Her date was already late. At the next table, almost close enough to touch, sat a woman with sleek black hair tied in a perfect low bun, a tailored black suit hugging her body in all the right places. She wasn't alone. She was having dinner with 2 older men, both clearly trying to impress her. But the woman barely paid them any attention. Her dark eyes were focused, cold, calculating. Powerful. The kind of woman who didn't wait for anyone. The kind of woman Samantha had only seen in movies. The kind of woman who could crush a heart just by looking at it. Samantha tried not to stare. She looked down at her cracked phone screen again. 7-Eleven, still no Becca. Her $20 sat in her purse like a ticking time bomb. Maybe she should just leave. Maybe this was a prank. Or worse, maybe she'd been stood up. Again. She could feel the sting behind her eyes, the humiliation clawing at her throat. A waiter approached. "Would you like to order a drink while you wait?" Samantha blinked. Just water, please." The waiter nodded politely and walked away, not even pretending to hide his amusement. At the next table, the woman in the black suit tilted her head slightly, eyes shifting just enough to watch Samantha. Subtle. Calculated. Curious. The men across from her were still talking, one of them laughing too loudly at his own joke, but the woman didn't laugh. She was watching Samantha. Samantha shifted uncomfortably, crossing her arms to hide the tiny hole in her sleeve. Her phone lit up. A message. "Becca, sorry. Something came up. Rain check." The world slowed. Rain check. 2 words. No apology. No reschedule. Just rejection. Again. She closed her eyes. Tried to breathe. She could feel the tears coming, but she swallowed them down. Not here. Not in this place. She pushed the phone back into her purse and sat frozen for a long moment, unsure of what to do next. Then the waiter returned with her water and a glass of red wine. "I didn't order this," she said quietly. The waiter smiled. Compliments of the lady at the next table. Samantha turned, startled. The woman in the black suit raised her glass ever so slightly. Their eyes met for the first time. And something shifted. Not a smile. Not yet. But there was a pull. A gravity. The woman nodded once, then returned to her conversation like nothing had happened. Samantha's throat tightened.
confused,
curious, a little breathless. Who the hell was she? And why did her gaze feel like a spark lighting something long dead inside her chest? Samantha stared at the deep red wine glistening in the crystal glass before her like it had arrived from another universe. She didn't touch it, not yet. It felt like a trap.
or a joke.
Or something that didn't belong to her world. But her fingers itched to hold it. Her lips wanted to taste it. Her eyes, however, drifted back to the woman in the black suit. The woman was speaking again, her voice low and controlled as she addressed the two men, but her gaze flicked sideways for the briefest second. Samantha caught it. It was deliberate.
A choice.
And it made her skin prickle. She looked away quickly, heart pounding, pulse fluttering at her throat. What the hell was happening? She hadn't planned for this. She'd barely made it through the front door without tripping over her own anxiety, and now some goddess in Armani was sending her wine and looking at her like she was an unsolved puzzle worth breaking apart. Samantha reached for the glass. Her fingers curled around the stem slowly, as if touching something sacred. It was heavier than she expected.
Cool.
Luxurious. She brought it to her lips, took a tentative sip. The wine was smooth, rich, like velvet sliding over her tongue. She closed her eyes, just for a second, as the warmth of it bloomed in her chest. She wasn't sure if it was the alcohol or the woman. Probably both. When she opened her eyes, the woman was standing. Her chair pushed back without a sound, her body moving with precise grace. The two men rose with her, still chattering like overexcited lapdogs, but she gave them a single nod and stepped away. And then she turned and walked straight to Samantha's table. Every atom in Samantha's body froze. The restaurant fell away. All the polished silverware and laughing patrons, the clinking glasses and gentle music, they became white noise as those sharp black heels stopped beside her table. The woman looked down at her, not unkindly, not with pity, just interested. Did she stand you up? Her voice was smooth.
Low.
The kind of voice you didn't hear, so much as feel. Samantha swallowed. Looks like it. Shame. The woman's lips curved, just slightly. May I? She gestured to the empty seat across from Samantha. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She nodded. The woman sat, every motion elegant, calculated. Her eyes never left Samantha's. I hope you don't mind. I hate eating alone. Samantha laughed before she could stop herself. I'm sure you had very enthusiastic company. They weren't listening, just performing. Her eyes flicked to the wine. You drank it.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Tense. Electric. You don't seem like someone who belongs here, the woman said finally, voice soft. Samantha flushed. Thanks. It's not an insult. You're real. That's rare. Samantha tried to smile. Well, I'm definitely really out of my depth. Are you? Her eyes narrowed just slightly. Because you're sitting here, in a place you can't afford, after being stood up. And yet, you haven't run. I was about to, but you didn't. The woman leaned forward just slightly, just enough. I like that. You don't even know me. Not yet. She extended a hand across the table. Ariella Vaughn. Samantha stared at it for a beat, too long, then shook it. Her fingers trembled. Ariella's were warm.
Strong.
Samantha Reyes. Well, Samantha Reyes. Ariella's lips curved again, slightly more this time. Would you like to eat with me? Samantha blinked. You're serious? I don't joke about food. Samantha hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Ariella raised her hand slightly, and instantly, a waiter appeared like magic. We'll have the chef's tasting menu. And another glass for the lady. Yes, Miss Vaughn. He vanished. Samantha stared at her. Miss Vaughn, she repeated slowly.
Wait.
As in, Vaughn Innovations. Ariella didn't respond, just sipped her wine, watching her over the rim. Samantha's stomach dropped. Oh God. She wasn't just rich. She was that rich. The kind of rich that owned buildings, cities, Futures. Samantha looked down at her clothes, at the worn cuffs of her blazer, the scuffed shoes, the hair she'd tried to tame with water and hope. I shouldn't be here. But you are. This is insane.
Maybe.
But I'm not asking for forever. Just dinner. The food arrived, tiny plates, beautiful and strange. Samantha barely tasted the first few bites, her nerves too loud. But Ariella spoke again, asking quiet, careful questions. About her life, her dreams, her art. And Samantha answered. Slowly at first, then with more color. She didn't even realize she was smiling until Ariella smiled back. The wine flowed. The food kept coming. And so did the conversation. And somewhere between the third course and dessert, something changed. Ariella leaned in, her gaze softer now. You have fire in you, Samantha. Even if you don't see it. Samantha swallowed, her throat thick. You don't know me. Not yet. She tilted her head, her voice quieter. But I want to. Samantha couldn't speak. Her whole body felt like it was humming. She was no one. A broke artist from a broken apartment who had $20 and a heart full of disappointment. And yet, this woman, this force of a woman, was looking at her like she mattered. Like she was something worth tasting slowly. Why me? She asked, voice a whisper. Ariella looked at her for a long moment. Because you looked like you were about to cry, and then you didn't. Samantha let out a shaky laugh. That's it. That's everything. And just like that, the air between them changed. There was a new silence. One full of questions neither dared to ask yet. But they both felt the weight of it. The beginning.
The shift.
The flicker of something dangerous and beautiful and completely impossible. The night air hit Samantha's cheeks like a bomb as she stepped out of the restaurant, the warmth of the wine still lingering in her veins, the taste of expensive food and forbidden attention clinging to her tongue. Ariella followed a few steps behind, her heels clicking softly on the pavement like the slow, measured beat of a war drum. Samantha didn't know where to look, what to say. Her head was spinning, not just from the alcohol but from her. The night had gone from disaster to dream in less than an hour, and the dream was standing too close, too real, too magnetic. Let me call you a car, Ariella said calmly, her voice now stripped of its sharpness, replaced by something quieter, almost gentle. Samantha shook her head, embarrassed. No, I'm okay. I'll take the train. Ariella arched one perfect brow. The train? Yeah, it's not that bad at night. I mean, it is bad, but I've survived worse. She tried to smile. Ariella didn't return it. She simply studied her in that maddening, unflinching way. You shouldn't be taking the train this late. I've done it 100 times. Doesn't mean you should have to. Samantha felt herself flush. That's life. No, Ariella stepped closer. That's your life. But not the one you deserve. The words hit harder than they should have. Like Ariella had reached into her chest and touched something raw. I don't need saving, Samantha said, sharper than she intended. Ariella didn't flinch. I didn't say you did. You don't know me. You don't know what I've had to. She stopped herself. Her voice cracked. Ariella's gaze softened just a fraction. You're right. I don't know your story. Not yet. But I want to. Samantha blinked at her. Why? Because you're different. Different how? Ariella tilted her head slightly, her eyes locked onto Samantha's with frightening precision. You made me feel something tonight. I don't remember the last time that happened. Samantha looked down at her shoes. At the worn edges. The frayed laces. The duct tape. I'm not someone like you. Your power. You walk into a room, and everyone notices. You probably own this city. Ariella didn't deny it, but she stepped even closer. And yet I noticed you. Samantha's breath caught. The streetlight above them flickered. Her whole body felt like a live wire. She wanted to run. She wanted to stay. She wanted to believe this was real, even when her instincts screamed it couldn't be. What happens now? She asked, almost afraid of the answer. Ariella studied her. That depends. I'm not going to force anything. But if you let me, I'd like to see you again. Samantha laughed, but it was bitter. I don't think I belong in your world. Then let me visit yours. Samantha stared at her. What, like, come over for ramen and broken furniture? Exactly that. There was no sarcasm in Ariella's voice. No mockery. Just sincerity. Samantha didn't know what to do with it. This doesn't make sense, she said. Good. Ariella smiled, small and crooked and devastating. The best things never do. A car pulled up to the curb, sleek and black and quiet. The driver stepped out, waiting without speaking. Ariella glanced at the car, then back at her. You sure you won't let me give you a ride? Samantha hesitated, then shook her head. Not tonight. Ariella nodded, as if she respected the choice, as if she understood it. Then at least let me give you this. She pulled a card from her coat pocket and handed it over. Simple. Elegant. Her name in silver. A private number.
Call me, she said.
Not a demand. A request. A challenge. Why? Samantha asked again because she couldn't help it. Ariella leaned in, so close Samantha could feel the warmth of her breath. Because I'm not done looking at you yet. And then she stepped away, slid into the car, and disappeared into the night. Samantha stood there, card in hand, heart in pieces. Everything felt surreal, impossible, dangerous. And yet, she couldn't stop the smile that broke through her uncertainty, or the fact that her fingers refused to let go of that card. That night, back in her apartment with peeling walls and a leaky faucet, Samantha sat on her creaky bed, staring at her cracked ceiling, still tasting the wine and the weight of Ariella's gaze. She didn't call. Not yet. But she kept the card under her pillow, just in case. 3 days passed. 3 long, achingly slow, emotionally turbulent days. Samantha carried Ariella's card everywhere, first in her pocket, then in her wallet, then under her pillow again. She hadn't called. Not because she didn't want to.
She did. Desperately.
But every time she held the card in her hands, she saw herself through Ariella's eyes. Or worse, through her own. She saw her peeling apartment walls, the leaky sink that hissed like a snake every time she brushed her teeth, the collection of mismatched mugs and chipped plates that made up her kitchenware. She saw the hollow place in her fridge where groceries should have been, and the paint-stained jeans draped over the chair in the corner of her room. What would someone like Ariella want with someone like her? A powerful woman who probably lived in a penthouse, whose wine cost more than Samantha's rent, who moved through the world with elegance and danger like it belonged to her. And still, Samantha couldn't stop thinking about her. The sound of her voice, the sharpness in her gaze, the quiet moment when she said, "Because I'm not done looking at you yet." On the 4th morning, Samantha woke up late, tangled in her blanket, hair a mess, dreams full of Ariella's silhouette. She lay there for too long, staring at the cracked ceiling, her heart already racing with indecision. And then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Coffee.
Today. Noon.
Luca's on 7th. Come if you want to. No name. But she didn't need one. Her fingers gripped the phone so tightly, it left little half-moons in her palm. The clock said 10:43. She had barely over an hour. Her legs moved before her brain did. She threw herself out of bed, splashed cold water on her face, rifled through a laundry basket of cleanish clothes and yanked on jeans, a sweater that didn't have holes, and her only pair of decent boots. She brushed her hair into some semblance of order and tried not to overthink, which was impossible, because all she could think was, why is she doing this?
What does she want?
What if it's all a game? But she still ran the 4 blocks to Luca's with her heart in her throat. The cafe was small, cozy, with foggy windows and a soft scent of cinnamon and espresso in the air. She almost didn't see Ariella at first. She was tucked into a corner booth, dressed down in a leather jacket and dark jeans, her hair loose, curling slightly at the ends. Casual.
Stunning.
Dangerous. Samantha froze for half a breath. And then Ariella looked up. Their eyes met. And it was like that night all over again. Electric. Samantha walked over slowly, heart hammering in her chest. Ariella said nothing. Just watched her. gaze unreadable, until Samantha slid into the seat across from her. "Hi," Samantha said, breathless. Ariella nodded once. "You came. You texted. You didn't call." "Neither did you." Ariella's mouth twitched. "Touché." Silence again, charged. "I didn't think you would," Ariella added after a moment. I almost didn't." "Why did you?" Samantha hesitated. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you." That admission landed heavy between them. Ariella didn't flinch, but her eyes darkened. Just a little. "Good," she said, then gestured toward the counter. "I ordered for you. I hope you like vanilla." Yeah, I do." "I know."
How?
"I asked the waiter that night." "Of course you did." Samantha shook her head, smiling despite herself. The barista brought over 2 mugs. One black coffee, one with cream and foam, and a dusting of cinnamon. Samantha curled her hands around the warmth of hers. "So," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt, "what is this?" Ariella raised an eyebrow. "Coffee." "You know what I mean." "Yes, I do." She leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low. "I don't do things like this, Samantha. I don't send drinks to strangers. I don't invite them to dinner. I don't text them. I haven't done this in a long time." "Done what?" "Wanted something that wasn't already mine." Samantha's breath caught. "And you think I'm something you want?" Ariella's eyes dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second. "I know it." The air between them felt too tight. Samantha looked down, suddenly overwhelmed. "You say all the right things." "No," Ariella said. "I say the true things. They just sound good when they come out of my mouth." That made Samantha laugh, really laugh. Ariella smiled at the sound. It softened something in her face. "So what now?" Samantha asked after a moment. "What do you want from me?" Ariella's smile faded slightly. She looked down at her own coffee. "I want to spend time with you. I want to know what makes you laugh. What makes you sad. I want to know why you look like you've been carrying something heavy for years." Samantha's throat tightened. "That's a lot. You don't have to give me anything you don't want to. I'm not here to take. I'm here to see." Samantha blinked at her. Her chest hurt. "Why me?" she whispered. Ariella looked at her like she was the only person in the cafe. "Because you're not afraid to feel. And because something in you is trying to come back to life." Samantha didn't answer.
Couldn't.
The tears were close, too close. She sipped her coffee to hide it. Ariella sat back, giving her space, respecting the silence. They finished their drinks in companionable quiet. And when they stood to leave, Ariella didn't try to kiss her or hold her hand. She simply said, "Tomorrow. Dinner. My place."
Why?
Samantha asked again. "Because I want to see what you look like under soft light." And then she walked away. The apartment building didn't look like any place Samantha had ever stepped foot in. The doorman wore a tailored uniform, the lobby had floors of polished marble and impossibly tall windows, and the elevator was lined with mirrored gold. Everything shimmered with quiet opulence. She almost turned back 3 times between the sidewalk and the top floor. Almost. But curiosity, dangerous, delicious, irresistible, won out. She pressed the penthouse button and rode in silence, gripping her tote bag like a shield. Inside was a bottle of cheap red wine she'd bought with the last of her tips, because showing up empty-handed felt wrong, and she had nothing else that even resembled a gift. The elevator opened directly into Ariella's home. No hallway, no buzzer, just her, standing barefoot in the middle of a vast living room that looked like it had been designed by a magazine editor, dressed in a loose black blouse, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders in soft, wild waves. Samantha stopped breathing. Ariella didn't move for a moment, just looked at her, like she was the only thing in the world she wanted to see. Then she smiled.
Small.
Controlled. Dangerous. "You came." Samantha stepped out slowly, unsure where to look. The floor was glass. The city lights sparkled beneath it like stars trapped below her feet. "I brought wine," she mumbled, holding it out like a peace offering. Ariella took it with both hands, holding it like it was worth more than it was. Perfect. It's definitely not. You are. Samantha looked at her sharply. You're going to keep saying things like that until I believe them, aren't you? Ariella arched an eyebrow. Maybe. You're impossible. And you're here. Ariella turned without another word and walked barefoot across the glass floor, her body moving with casual elegance. Samantha followed, trying not to look like a tourist in a life that didn't belong to her. The kitchen was all sleek lines and chrome, but warm too, soft lighting, the scent of herbs in the air. You cooked? Samantha asked, surprised. Ariella glanced over her shoulder. Do I look like I don't know how to feed someone properly? Honestly? Samantha grinned. You look like someone who has a private chef and never touches a stove. Ariella laughed, low and unexpected. Touché. She handed Samantha a glass of wine and gestured for her to sit. But I do cook, when it's worth it. And tonight is? Ariella didn't answer right away. Instead, she began plating food, pasta made fresh, crusty bread still warm, roasted vegetables arranged like art. Then she brought everything to the table and sat across from her. Tonight, she said softly, I wanted to feel like a person.
Not a job.
Not a name. Just a woman, having dinner with someone who doesn't want anything from her. Samantha's expression softened. And you think I don't want anything? Ariella looked at her directly. You want to be seen. Not bought. Not used. Not measured. Just seen. The words slid into the air between them and settled like heat on Samantha's skin. She picked up her fork, suddenly shy. So, what do you see when you look at me? Ariella tilted her head, studied her. I see a woman who's trying to stay small so the world doesn't notice how bright she really is. A woman who's been told she's too much or not enough, and believed both. A woman who feels like everything's been taken from her before she even had a chance to hold it. Samantha's throat closed. Her appetite vanished. The words hit too deep. Too fast. Ariella noticed. She reached across the table, not to touch her, but just close enough that Samantha felt the warmth of her presence. Tell me if I'm wrong. Samantha shook her head, eyes burning. You're not. Ariella pulled her hand back slowly. Good. I hate being wrong. Dinner was slower after that. Quieter.
But not in a bad way.
There were long stretches of silence that didn't feel empty. Ariella asked about her art, real questions, not small talk, and listened with the kind of attention that made Samantha feel exposed.
Seen.
It terrified her. And yet, she found herself answering honestly. About her father leaving. About her mother working 2 jobs. About growing up hungry, but trying to create beauty out of scraps. She didn't know why she was telling Ariella all this. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the view. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in years, someone was looking at her like she wasn't broken. After dessert, dark chocolate and berries, Ariella stood. Come here, she said. Samantha hesitated. Why? Because I want to show you something. They walked to the wall of windows, where the city glittered like a sea of secrets. Ariella flicked a switch, and the lights dimmed until they were wrapped in a soft golden glow. She stood beside Samantha, close but not touching. I come here when I can't breathe, she said quietly. When I feel like I'm disappearing. You. Samantha turned toward her. You're like the woman. You own this world. No, Ariella said, her voice barely a whisper. I know how to survive in it. That's not the same thing. Samantha didn't know what to say to that. So she said nothing, just stood beside her in silence. Then Ariella turned, and the space between them vanished. Her fingers brushed Samantha's wrist. Barely a touch, but Samantha shivered. Ariella's voice was low, trembling with something unspoken. May I? Samantha nodded, and Ariella leaned in, slow, deliberate, until her lips touched Samantha's, not rushed, not demanding. Just there. Warm. Testing. Waiting. Samantha melted. The kiss deepened, lips parting, breath mingling. Ariella's hand cupped her face, firm but gentle, while Samantha clutched at her blouse like she was afraid she'd vanish. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. The city pulsed beneath them. Ariella rested her forehead against Samantha's. "You taste like the kind of trouble I want to drown in." Samantha laughed shakily. "You should know I'm a mess." Ariella smiled.
Good.
"I'm tired of perfection." They stayed there, pressed together, heartbeat to heartbeat, as the city burned around them and the night held its breath. Samantha didn't sleep that night. Not because she stayed at Ariella's, she hadn't. After the kiss, they'd lingered in silence, fingers barely touching, until Ariella whispered, "Not yet." The words weren't rejection. They were restraint, respect, a line drawn by someone who knew how dangerous crossing it too fast could be. Ariella had called her a car. Not a town car. Not a luxury SUV. A regular taxi, at Samantha's quiet insistence. And when she got home, still tasting Ariella's kiss on her lips, her heart pounded like a drum in a war she hadn't realized she'd enlisted in. She lay on her narrow mattress, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide in the dark, remembering everything, the heat of Ariella's hands, the tension in her jaw when she spoke about needing to feel like a person, the way she'd said "you taste like the kind of trouble I want to drown in," like it was both confession and prophecy. And it terrified her. Because she hadn't planned for any of this. She hadn't wanted this. Samantha had been surviving. Quietly. Efficiently. Just trying to keep her head above water. Ariella was a storm. And part of her, a big, reckless, treacherous part, wanted to drown in it too. By morning, she still hadn't decided what any of it meant. But her phone buzzed. A new message. Saturday.
Noon. Come with me.
Don't ask where. No punctuation. No signature. But the same number. Ariella. Samantha stared at the screen. It was Friday. Less than 24 hours away. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for several minutes before she typed. "What should I wear?" The reply came immediately. Something that feels like armor, but lets you breathe. Samantha had no idea what that meant. But the thought of Ariella imagining her wearing anything made her stomach twist with anticipation and dread. Saturday arrived like a warning. Samantha spent the morning pacing, changing outfits, cursing herself, changing again. She finally settled on black jeans, boots, and a worn leather jacket over a dark red top that clung just enough to make her feel strong. Not sexy. Not polished. Just present. When the car pulled up, she recognized the driver. Same man who'd driven Ariella's car that night outside the restaurant.
He didn't speak.
Just nodded. 30 minutes later, they were driving past the city limits. Then through winding hills. Then past a private gate with no signage. The car stopped in front of a sprawling estate built into the cliffs above the water. It wasn't flashy. It was architectural poetry. Brutal and beautiful at once. And Ariella stood at the entrance, wind in her hair, dressed in black. Again. Always. But this time it wasn't the perfect CEO ensemble. She wore boots, leather gloves, and a long, tailored coat. She looked like she belonged in a noir film or a battlefield. Samantha stepped out slowly, heart hammering. "Where are we?" she asked. Ariella turned without answering and nodded toward the edge of the cliff. Samantha followed, boots crunching over gravel until they reached a large metal door embedded in the hillside. Ariella pressed a code. The door hissed open, and inside, an art gallery. Hidden underground. Concrete and glass. Spotlights casting long shadows across the space. But it wasn't just any gallery. The walls were lined with paintings. Not famous ones. Not collected. Personal.
Raw.
Experimental. "These are yours," Samantha whispered, stepping closer to a canvas splashed in violent red. Ariella's voice was quiet behind her.
No.
"They're my mother's." Samantha turned slowly. "Your mother was an artist?" Ariella corrected. "She doesn't paint anymore. She doesn't do anything anymore. Early onset dementia." The words landed like stones. Ariella didn't look at her. Just walked slowly into the gallery, hands in her coat pockets. "She was the only person who ever really saw me. Before all this. Before the company. The headlines."
She taught me how to be soft.
Before I had to be sharp. Samantha followed her in silence. Why are you showing me this? Ariella finally looked at her. Because I need you to understand something. What? That I come from broken things too. The air between them thickened. Samantha's throat felt tight. She didn't speak, afraid her voice would betray too much. Ariella continued walking. I bought this land because it's the only place I feel close to her. I built this gallery to protect her work. Not for the world. Just for me. For the part of me I'm terrified to let anyone see. Why me? Samantha asked, the question rising again like a wound that never closed. Ariella turned, walked toward her slowly. Because you're not afraid to hurt. Because you let the pain show. And because I'm tired of hiding all the ways I've bled to survive. When they stopped, inches apart, Samantha felt every beat of her own heart echo in her ribs. You scare me, she whispered. Ariella's voice was low. You scare me too. Samantha shook her head. You're dangerous. And you're not. Ariella smiled, barely. You walked into that restaurant with $20 and sat alone in the middle of a room full of people who would have eaten you alive. That's dangerous, Samantha. The name landed like a caress on Ariella's tongue. Then she reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Samantha's cheek. I didn't bring you here to impress you. I brought you here because if I don't show you who I really am, I don't deserve to touch you again. Samantha's eyes burned. No one had ever looked at her like that. Not with hunger. Not with reverence. Not with fear. Touch me now, she said, breathless. Ariella did. Her hands were firmer this time, urgent but controlled. The kiss wasn't soft, it was fire.
Messy. Desperate.
Samantha wrapped her arms around her neck, pulled her close, let herself be consumed. And this time, neither of them pulled away. They kissed until the shadows shifted, until the past echoed less, until the only thing left in the world was the sound of two hearts refusing to break alone. The next morning came in pieces. Soft light pouring through the enormous windows. The subtle rustle of sheets. A scent Samantha couldn't quite name. Clean skin, citrus, faint perfume, and something uniquely Ariella. Samantha lay still for a moment, disoriented. Her heart was beating too fast, her body too aware of the way warmth clung to her, along her arms, her back, her legs. And then she felt it, the weight of another body behind her. Ariella's arm wrapped possessively around her waist. Her breath slow, steady, brushing against the curve of Samantha's neck. They had fallen asleep tangled, limbs like vines, like the only way to survive the night was to hold on until morning. And somehow they had. Slowly, gently, Samantha turned her head just enough to look at her. Ariella was still asleep. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, lips parted slightly, the harsh edge of her usual expression completely gone. She looked younger.
Softer.
Vulnerable in a way that made Samantha ache. She couldn't believe she was here. In this bed. In this home. With this woman. A CEO. A storm. A mystery. And yet, in this moment, just a woman breathing beside her. Not perfect. Not untouchable. Just real. Last night played in her mind like a film. Slow, hot, undeniable. The way Ariella kissed her like she was trying to memorize her mouth. The way she'd whispered her name over and over like a prayer and a curse. The way they'd held each other long after the urgency had passed. But now, in the calm, doubt returned. Samantha slipped out of the bed quietly, careful not to wake her. She found her clothes folded neatly on a bench near the window. Ariella had done that. Of course she had. The kind of woman who noticed everything. Even the quiet chaos inside someone else. Samantha pulled on her jeans and sweater, finger-combing her hair into some kind of order. She stood by the window, looking out at the cliffs, the water crashing far below, the world that felt so impossibly far from her own. What was she doing? This wasn't her life. She was an accident in this world. Temporary. Ariella stirred behind her. Samantha turned and saw her sitting up, sheets tangled around her waist, hair wild, eyes heavy with sleep and something else, something unreadable. You were trying to leave. The voice wasn't accusatory, just quiet, observant. I wasn't sure if I should still be here, Samantha admitted. Ariella nodded once. That makes two of us. Samantha blinked. You scare me, Ariella said, running a hand through her hair. You don't know how rare that is. Because I'm broke and don't fit in your world? No, Ariella stood, slowly, completely unbothered by her nakedness, wrapping herself in a black silk robe. Because you make me feel like myself. And I don't know what to do with that. The honesty in her voice hit Samantha harder than anything else. She crossed the room, stood in front of her. I don't know what this is. Neither do I, Ariella admitted. But I don't want to stop. Even if it gets messy, especially if it does. They stared at each other for a long, fragile moment. And then Samantha leaned in. Not a kiss, just her forehead pressed gently against Ariella's. A quiet I'm still here. Ariella let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Stay, she whispered. At least for coffee. Samantha smiled. Do you even know how to make coffee? Ariella smirked. I know how to have it delivered. They shared that laugh, raw and real. And something in the air shifted again. It wasn't about sex now, or heat, or power. It was about two people trying to figure out how to be seen without falling apart. The day moved slowly. They made breakfast. Well, Samantha cooked while Ariella stole bites and leaned against the counter like a smug cat. They talked. Not in circles. Not in flirtation. Just real. About childhoods.
About pain.
About the fear of being too much and never enough. I don't let people in, Ariella said at one point, eyes locked on hers. Ever. Why me? Samantha asked again, unable to stop herself. Ariella's gaze softened. Because I've built empires and ruined people and never once felt guilty. But when I kissed you that first time, I felt terrified I'd ruin you. Samantha didn't know what to say, so she just touched her hand. And Ariella didn't pull away. When it was time to leave, the goodbye came slower. No rush. No pretense. Just two women standing too close, not ready to let go. I want to see you again, Ariella said. You will, Samantha replied. But as she walked out the door, the doubt returned like a shadow. This was real. Too real. And real things broke. As the elevator closed, Samantha clutched the strap of her bag and tried not to fall in love with a woman who could destroy her with a glance. Samantha tried to return to her routine, but nothing fit anymore. The tiny apartment that once felt like a protective shell now pressed against her like a cage. The paint on the walls seemed more chipped, the faucet louder, the silence heavier. Her studio, her sacred corner where she painted through pain and hunger, felt hollow. She picked up her brush, stared at a blank canvas, and for the first time in months, nothing came. Her hand wouldn't move. Her chest was too full. Of what she didn't know. Maybe fear. Maybe Ariella. Maybe both. She hadn't seen her in 5 days. Not because they were ignoring each other. Ariella had texted. Simple things. Thinking about you. Today's hell. Wish I could escape to that moment with you by the window. I miss your voice. And Samantha had replied. Briefly. Honestly. But never starting the conversation. She was afraid. Of what this was. Of what it could become. Of how it could break her. Or worse, how it could change her. But on the 6th day, Samantha walked out of work exhausted, paint on her jeans, sweat on her neck, and found a black car parked across the street. The window rolled down slowly. Ariella. No words. Just a look. A silent question. Samantha walked over and opened the door. Slid inside. Neither of them spoke for a while. Ariella didn't reach for her. Didn't smile. Just drove. Out of the city. Past the noise. Past the chaos. Until they reached a quiet road lined with trees and a lake shimmering beneath the dusk sky. She parked, killed the engine, and turned toward Samantha. Her voice was low. Tense. Tell me what you're afraid of. Samantha stared at her hands. You. Ariella's expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened.
Why?
Because I like who I am when I'm around you.
But I don't know who that is.
Ariella said nothing. Samantha continued, her voice growing rougher. You walk into a room, and the world bends around you. You know who you are. I've spent years trying to convince myself I mattered. That I didn't have to become invisible to be safe. And then you. She stopped shaking her head. You see me, and I want to let you. But I'm afraid that if you get too close, I'll lose everything I've built just to stand on my own 2 feet. Silence filled the car. Heavy, cracking at the edges. Then Ariella whispered, I spent most of my life making sure no one could get close enough to hurt me. I built walls so high even I couldn't see over them. And then you sat across from me in that restaurant. And I knew, her voice broke. Just for a second. I knew if I let you in, you'd ruin all of it. And I wanted it anyway. Samantha looked at her. Why me? Ariella let out a bitter laugh. You keep asking that like I've made a mistake. Because it feels like a mistake. Like I'm temporary. Like this ends with you remembering who you are and realizing I don't fit. Ariella turned in her seat. Reached for her hand.
Took it.
Held it tight. I've spent years being everything to everyone. Powerful. Controlled. Untouchable. But you, she swallowed hard. You're the first thing I've wanted in a very long time. Not because you're easy. But because you're not. You challenge me. You make me want to feel. And I've built an empire on not feeling. Samantha blinked against the sting in her eyes. Then tell me this won't hurt. I can't. Why not? Because anything worth having might hurt. But I promise you this, I won't leave just because I get scared. And I won't let you leave just because you are. That undid her. Something inside her broke open. And before she could stop herself, Samantha leaned across the center console and kissed her. Not soft. Not sweet.
Fierce.
Like she was saying all the things she didn't have the language for. Ariella responded in kind, grabbing the back of her neck, pulling her in deeper, kissing her like she needed it to breathe. They didn't stop. Not until the windows fogged and their bodies trembled, and every breath was a gasp. They didn't go back to the city that night. Ariella drove them to a small cabin she owned near the lake, a place she said she hadn't brought anyone to in over 10 years. There was no Wi-Fi, no security, just silence. And for 2 nights, they existed in it. No phones, no titles, no expectations. They cooked, bathed together, talked about fears and dreams and regrets. They kissed until their lips ached and held each other like they were learning how to be human again. But on the morning of the 3rd day, Samantha found Ariella outside, standing at the edge of the dock, her phone pressed to her ear, her expression hard.
Cold.
Professional. Like the woman from the restaurant had returned.
No.
Tell him if the board wants my vote, they'll wait. I'm not flying back early. A pause. A colder tone. Then tell the board to burn. She hung up.
Turned.
Saw Samantha. And for a split second, her face cracked. Regret.
Guilt.
Conflict. Samantha walked toward her slowly. Do you need to go? Ariella hesitated. They'll wait. I said what I said. But you didn't want to say it. I wanted to be here more. And when that's not enough? Ariella looked down at the water. Then we talk about what comes next. Samantha didn't answer. Just stepped beside her. Slipped her hand into Ariella's.
Held on.
And the wind carried the promise of something neither of them was ready to name, but both of them were terrified to lose. The return to the city was silent. Not because there was nothing to say. On the contrary, the air inside the car was heavy with unspoken words. But neither Samantha nor Ariella dared to shatter the fragile quiet they'd built between them over the last few days. The cabin had been a dream, a suspended reality. But now the skyline loomed again, familiar and cruel, a reminder that real life waited with teeth bared. Ariella's phone buzzed incessantly in the center console. Each vibration was like a needle pressed against Samantha's skin, and though Ariella ignored it, her jaw was clenched, her shoulders tight. She was back in armor. And Samantha felt it, like a door gently closing between them. When the car stopped in front of Samantha's apartment, neither of them moved at first. Then Ariella turned, eyes scanning her face. I want to see you tomorrow night.
Dinner.
At mine. Her voice was steady, controlled, like it had been rehearsed. Samantha hesitated. Are you sure you'll have time? Ariella's expression flickered. I'll make it. Even if the board burns? That earned the ghost of a smile. Let them burn slower. Samantha laughed, but it didn't reach her chest. Okay, she said. Tomorrow. She leaned in, kissed Ariella softly, brief but meaningful, and stepped out of the car. She didn't look back. The next morning, Samantha woke to news she hadn't expected. Not about Ariella.
Not yet.
But about herself. She had submitted 3 pieces months ago to a local emerging artist showcase. She had almost forgotten about it, convinced they'd been overlooked or dismissed. But they'd been accepted. Not only accepted, she'd been offered a small solo feature in a downtown gallery, one of the few indie spaces left in the city. Her name, her art, her night. She stared at the email in shock, her breath caught in her throat. It didn't feel real. She didn't know if she should scream, cry, or collapse. Instead, she texted the only person who'd believe in her more than she did. Gina. Holy shit, you did it. I knew you would. I'm bringing balloons and maybe a mini donkey. Samantha laughed through her tears. She wanted to tell Ariella immediately, but a part of her hesitated. Would this matter to her? Would it feel small in comparison to everything Ariella touched? Or would she be proud? She drafted the message 5 times before sending the simplest version. I got accepted into the Dusk Street Gallery. My own little corner. The show is next month. Minutes passed. Nothing. An hour. Still nothing. Samantha told herself Ariella was busy, that she'd respond when she could. But the pit in her stomach twisted tighter. That evening, Samantha arrived at Ariella's penthouse for dinner. But the energy was different. The lights were dimmer, the room colder, and Ariella was already drinking. Wine. Deep red, poured into a glass. She didn't bother to set down. Hey, Samantha said cautiously, slipping off her jacket. Rough day. Ariella turned, slow. She looked exhausted.
Pale.
Her usual polish dulled. You could say that. What happened? The board moved up the vote. One of the partners leaked confidential documents. The press is circling. I had to fire someone I've worked with for 10 years. Her voice was flat, emotionless. And now I'm being told I need to step back, at least temporarily, to keep the company's reputation intact. Samantha blinked. Wait, what? You're stepping down? Not officially. Just publicly invisible. She drained the glass. The optics matter more than the truth. Samantha walked toward her, slow. I'm sorry. That's God. That's awful. Ariella set the glass down. Her eyes found Samantha's. It's not your fault. But something in her tone said it still hurts anyway. Samantha reached out to touch her, but Ariella stepped back. Subtle. But it stung. I also saw your message, she added. About the gallery. Samantha swallowed. Yeah. I didn't want to bother you. You weren't. But her voice didn't carry the warmth Samantha had hoped for. I should be happy for you, Ariella said, almost to herself. But all I can think about is how I'm unraveling while you're rising. The words cut deeper than either of them intended. Samantha froze. Is that what you think this is? Competition? No, Ariella looked away. It's not rational. It's just, I've spent so long building everything, controlling everything. And now I can't stop it from falling apart. And I don't know how to exist in someone else's joy when I'm drowning in my own failure. Samantha's voice broke. Then say that. Don't punish me for being proud of something. I'm not. You are. She stepped closer. You're scared. And you're pushing me away before I can see the cracks. Ariella met her gaze, jaw tight. What if the cracks are all that's left? Then let me see them anyway. They stood in silence, breathing hard, 2 storms colliding. And then Ariella whispered, I don't know how to do this. Samantha stepped into her space. Neither do I. But I'm still here. Ariella closed her eyes. I don't want to lose you. Then don't. I'm not used to needing anyone. You don't need me, Samantha said softly. But maybe you want me. And that's enough. Finally, Ariella reached for her,
Pulled her in.
held her like a woman who had lost too much too often and didn't want to lose again. And Samantha let herself be held. Let herself believe, for one more night, that wanting could be stronger than fear. But deep down, both of them knew the fall was coming, and neither of them was ready for the landing. Samantha hadn't planned to cry in the middle of a hardware store, but there she was, aisle 5, standing between buckets of white primer and overpriced brushes, phone shaking in her hand, tears burning behind her eyes. The gallery had called. The pipes in their exhibit wing had burst overnight. Water damage, mold risk, fire inspection. The Dusk Street show was being postponed indefinitely, maybe canceled altogether. She barely heard the words past the ringing in her ears. Her solo night. Her first real shot.
Gone.
Samantha lowered the phone and stared at the cement floor like it could give her a reason to keep breathing. Everything she'd painted, everything she'd put into this, was back in limbo. Her knees felt weak. Her heart felt like it had dropped into her stomach and shattered. And all she wanted, all at once, was to call Ariella, to hear her voice. But she didn't. Not after the way they'd left things. Ariella had held her like she was made of glass, and then disappeared again the next day. No text. No call. Not even a message from her assistant. The last thing Samantha needed was to beg for attention from a woman who didn't know how to stay. Instead, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie, paid for her brushes with a few dollars she had left, and walked out into the cold gray of late afternoon with paint and heartbreak in her bag. By the time she got home, Gina was waiting on the couch with 2 mugs of tea and a look that said she already knew. You didn't even have to say a word, Gina murmured as Samantha dropped her things and collapsed into her lap. Bad news. Samantha nodded into her friend's shoulder. They pulled the show.
God. I'm so sorry.
Her voice cracked. I thought this was finally my turn. It is your turn, Gina said fiercely. Just not on their schedule. Samantha let herself cry then. Really cry. Not just for the gallery, but for Ariella. For the way things were unraveling. For how she kept trying to build something and watching the world tear it down every time she reached too high. That night, Samantha stared at her blank canvas again. But this time, instead of trying to paint something perfect, she just picked up the brush and broke. She splashed color like it was blood. She tore paper, smeared pigment, used her fingers, her elbows, her anger. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just felt. And for the first time in weeks, something inside her opened again. Meanwhile, across the city, Ariella stood at a window she couldn't see through, phone in hand, message half-written. She typed out a dozen versions. Erased every one. She wanted to reach out. Needed to. But the world around her was on fire. Her company was in chaos. The board split against her. The press relentless. She was barely sleeping. Barely functioning. And yet, Samantha was always there, in her thoughts, in her chest, in her blood. A quiet warmth she couldn't shake. Ariella paced. Tried to focus. Couldn't. Finally, she tapped out a message. I know I've been gone.
I'm sorry.
I don't know how to do this, and still be who I need to be. But I miss you. She hesitated. Then deleted it. Instead, she typed. Are you okay? She hit send. And waited. Samantha saw the message after midnight. She sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by half-dried canvases, her hands still stained with color. She stared at the text for a long time, heart-thudding. Then, with fingers that trembled more than she'd admit, she replied.
No.
But I'm trying. Ariella read the message instantly. Her chest tightened. Her throat burned. She typed, Can I see you? Samantha paused. Then sent. I don't want to be a secret. Or a pause between board meetings. I want to matter when your world's on fire. Ariella stared at that sentence. It felt like a wound, and a truth she'd never dared face. You do matter. Samantha hesitated. Then show me. The next day, Ariella made headlines. Not for another business scandal. Not for stepping down. But for appearing unannounced at a small press event for the city's independent art scene. Dressed in black, lips painted crimson, she stood at the podium and said, clearly and without hesitation, "The arts matter. They matter because they are the only language we have when the world stops making sense. We cannot afford to silence the voices who paint truth into being. Especially not now." Reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. She didn't flinch. When asked why she was there, she smiled. Because someone I care about deserves to be seen. That night, she showed up at Samantha's door. No warning. No pretense. Just a knock. Samantha opened it, heart hammering, barefoot, and still covered in paint. Ariella stood there holding a rolled canvas in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "What is that?" Samantha asked, eyeing the canvas. Ariella unrolled it slowly. It was blank.
White.
Unmarked. "It's for you," she said. "Because I don't want to be the storm that ruins you. I want to be the space you paint into." Samantha stared at her, speechless. Ariella stepped forward, voice softer now. "I was terrified. I thought I had to choose between power and vulnerability, between control and love. But I don't want to keep choosing fear. I want to choose you." Samantha's eyes filled with tears.
Then stay.
"And don't disappear next time it gets hard." "I won't. Promise me." Ariella nodded. "On everything I've built. You matter more." And for the first time, Samantha believed her. Not because of the speech, or the canvas, or the wine, but because Ariella was standing here, in her broken little apartment, without her armor. And she didn't look like a CEO. She looked like a woman who had finally decided she didn't want to be alone anymore. Samantha pulled her inside, closed the door behind them, and kissed her like she was starting something they might actually finish this time. Ariella stayed. She stayed through the night and didn't leave the next morning. When Samantha woke up tangled in sheets and skin, sunlight cutting soft lines across the cracked ceiling, Ariella was still there, hair a mess, face bare, one arm draped over Samantha's waist like it belonged there. And maybe it did. They spent the entire day inside Samantha's apartment. No suits. No chauffeurs. No city views or custom espresso. Just coffee brewed on a stove that barely worked, 2 mugs that didn't match, and kisses between bites of toast. Ariella sat cross-legged on the floor as Samantha painted, silently watching her work with eyes that held something reverent. And Samantha, despite the mess, despite the nervousness, let her watch. Because there was nothing left to hide. That night, curled up on the couch with a blanket over their legs and the soft hum of music in the background, Ariella asked, "What scares you the most about all of this?" Samantha didn't look away. "Losing myself in someone again." "Have you done that before?" "Once." She hesitated. "It ended with me standing in the rain, begging someone not to walk away. She did anyway." Ariella's fingers tightened slightly around hers. "I don't want to be that person." "Then don't be." "What if I already am?" "You're not." Samantha leaned her head on Ariella's shoulder. "You're here. You're still here. That's already more than she ever did." Ariella kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Then I'll keep showing up." And she did. For 2 full weeks, Ariella Vaughn, untouchable CEO, headline queen, whispered name in every boardroom, started slipping out of her world and into Samantha's. Quietly.
Consistently.
She brought groceries to the apartment, cooking badly, but trying anyway. She started learning how to stretch canvas, how to clean brushes without ruining the bristles. She sat at Samantha's side during long painting sessions, sometimes talking, sometimes not. They made out in the hallway like teenagers, kissed against door frames, laughed in the kitchen until flour covered their faces. Samantha learned that Ariella hated coriander, that she had an irrational fear of antique dolls, and that she'd once broken her arm trying to impress a girl in college by climbing onto the roof of the library. Ariella learned that Samantha talked in her sleep, that she always painted barefoot, and that she still didn't believe compliments when they came from people she loved. It was messy, Imperfect.
Real.
But it was good. Until Ariella's world found them again. It happened on a Friday. Samantha was walking back from the art supply store, bag slung over her shoulder, headphones in when she saw it. A photograph. Her face. Her name.
On a gossip blog.
Is this the woman who tamed Ariella Vaughn? Sources say the mysterious artist has been spending nights at the CEO's apartment. Friends close to Vaughn say things are serious, maybe even dangerous. Her stomach dropped. She clicked the article. The photos were grainy, taken from across the street. One of her entering Ariella's building. Another of them through a window, blurred but unmistakable. Samantha felt like she couldn't breathe. The article went on to speculate about her background, about her finances, about how someone with no career and no reputation could have gotten Ariella's attention. The final paragraph stung the hardest. If Vaughn's image is already cracking under the weight of corporate scandal, an affair with a struggling nobody might be the final blow. She dropped her phone, picked it up, tried to call Ariella. Voicemail. Tried again. Nothing. Her fingers were shaking. Her chest tight. The street spun around her. It wasn't just the article. It was the sudden realization that nothing about their world was private anymore. Not her name. Not her face. Not her love. By the time she got home, Gina was already there, holding the laptop open with the tabs still on the article. I tried to get them to take it down, she said. But it's already viral. It's everywhere. Samantha nodded slowly, trying to process. Did she know this would happen? I don't think so. But she should have. She was still trembling when Ariella finally showed up 2 hours later, breathless, heels in hand, hair wind-whipped and wild. I just saw it, she said. I came as soon as I could. They know my name, Samantha whispered. They know where I live. I'll handle it. You can't handle this, Ariella. Not like everything else. This isn't a boardroom. This is my life. My privacy. My peace. I didn't leak anything. I would never. But you didn't protect me either. Ariella froze. I didn't think it would happen this fast. You didn't think, Samantha snapped. You brought me into your world without preparing me for what it would do to mine. The silence that followed was brutal. Ariella looked wrecked. Do you regret this? She asked. Us. Samantha hesitated, then shook her head.
No.
But I'm scared. So am I. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one losing something? Ariella stepped forward, voice breaking. You're not. I just don't know how to love you without breaking everything else I've built. Samantha whispered. Then maybe you need to decide what matters more. The words hung between them like a blade. Neither moved. The space between them, once magnetic, now felt like a canyon. And somewhere deep in both of them, something cracked. Samantha didn't hear from Ariella for 5 days. Not a text. Not a call. Not a knock on her door. Just silence. It echoed louder than any argument ever could. The internet hadn't forgotten. Her name was still plastered in the corners of blogs and forums, now twisted into memes, headlines, and speculation. Her social media had become a battleground, strangers sending hate, condescension, even pity. But worse than all of it was the people defending her, saying she was brave for dating someone like Ariella. Lucky. As if Ariella were a prize to be won. As if Samantha were nothing but a side character in someone else's success story. She stopped painting. She stopped sleeping. The only thing she did was walk. For hours. Through alleys, parks, abandoned neighborhoods, anywhere the world didn't know her face. And yet, even in the furthest corners of the city, her thoughts returned to Ariella like a bruise she couldn't stop pressing. The way she held her. The way she said her name like a secret. The way she had tried.
Failed.
But tried. On the 6th day, Gina found her on the fire escape, knees to her chest, hoodie pulled up despite the heat. You need to stop waiting for her to fix this, Gina said gently. I'm not, Samantha lied. Then why haven't you picked up a brush since it happened? Samantha didn't answer. Gina sat beside her. You love her. I do. Then you need to decide if love is enough. Samantha turned her face away. What if it's not? Then at least you'll know you gave it everything. That night, Samantha stood in front of a blank canvas for 3 hours. She didn't paint. She just stood there, brush in hand, heart wide open, waiting for something to come. It didn't, until a knock came at the door.
Soft.
Uncertain. She knew it was her. Somehow, even through the silence, she knew. Samantha opened the door. And there was Ariella, drenched from the rain, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her face, eyes bloodshot like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice cracked. I messed up. Samantha stepped aside silently. Ariella entered slowly, dripping water onto the floor, her hands clenched tightly at her sides like if she let go, she'd shatter. I thought if I stayed away long enough, I'd figure out how to make it better. But all I did was prove you were right. Samantha stayed quiet, arms crossed. I wanted to protect you, Ariella said. But I've spent so long building a life where I didn't have to protect anyone. I thought power made me safe. That if I controlled everything, I couldn't lose anything. But I'm losing you anyway. Samantha's voice was low. You didn't lose me. Not yet. Ariella stepped closer, hesitant. Do I still get a chance to fight for you? Samantha's eyes burned. Only if you stop treating me like something delicate. I'm not fragile, Ariella. But I deserve more than silence. Ariella nodded, trembling. I know that now. I'm not proud of the way I handled this. But I love you. Samantha flinched. You've never said that before. I've never meant anything more in my life. The words hung between them like a breath. Samantha reached out slowly, took Ariella's wet hand into hers. Then prove it. Ariella looked at her.
How?
Don't disappear again. I won't. Be brave enough to stand beside me when the world turns its back. Always. And don't just love me in private. Ariella's expression cracked completely. I want to love you everywhere. Loudly. Shamelessly. Always. And with that, Samantha pulled her in. Not with desperation, but with certainty. The kiss was slow. Solid.
Real.
Rain clung to Ariella's skin, to her lashes, to her lips, but Samantha didn't care. She kissed her anyway, and Ariella kissed back like she'd been starving. That night, they lay in bed, not talking, just breathing, hands intertwined over the sheets. The storm outside mirrored the one still inside both of them, but at least they weren't weathering it alone. In the morning, Ariella didn't leave. She made coffee. She cleaned the floor where the rain had pooled. She stood behind Samantha as she picked up a brush and painted for the first time in almost 2 weeks. And she didn't ask what the painting meant. She just stood there and watched. Later that afternoon, Ariella opened her phone and typed a statement. A public one. She posted it to her official accounts. Privacy is a privilege. Love is not a scandal. I am in a relationship with a woman who inspires me, grounds me, challenges me. Her name is Samantha Reyes. And I'm no longer interested in hiding the things that matter most. It was short, but it was enough. Enough to set fire to the media again. Enough to get calls from the board. Enough to make headlines. But when Ariella turned off her phone and looked at Samantha across the room, none of it mattered.
I'm yours, she said. No headlines.
No company. Just me.
And you.
And for the first time since the night at Lashuria, Samantha smiled without hesitation. Because maybe love wasn't clean. Maybe it didn't come quietly. But it was here. And she was ready to fight for it. Too. The public statement changed everything. Not just in headlines or comment sections, but in the space between Samantha and Ariella. The silence that used to loom between them had been replaced with clarity. Commitment. Ariella's world, once polished and impenetrable, was now cracking in the light, and instead of hiding the fractures, she was letting Samantha see them all. It didn't fix everything, but it made them real.
And real was enough.
At least for now. The fallout came fast, of course. Investors questioned Ariella's emotional state. The board issued a formal letter of concern. Anonymous sources called her reckless. Some tried to spin her statement as a distraction tactic. But Ariella didn't flinch. She walked into the next board meeting alone, with her head high and her priorities sharper than ever. She let them talk. Then, when it was her turn, she stood and said, "I've made this company billions. I've navigated crises, built empires, and played your game. But I'm not apologizing for loving someone who makes me better. If you think that's a liability, vote me out. I'll be gone by morning." No one voted. No one dared. That night, she came home to Samantha's apartment. Still the same cracked walls, the same crooked window, the same fridge that made strange noises after midnight, and collapsed onto the couch like she'd survived a war. Samantha curled up beside her, threading their fingers together. "Still CEO?" Ariella gave a tired smirk. "For now." "Pity. I was hoping we could run away and start a commune in the woods. Maybe next scandal." They laughed, exhausted and free. But even with the world slowly shifting around them, a different storm was building beneath the surface, one neither of them saw coming. It started with a message. A simple, unmarked envelope slipped under Samantha's door one morning while Ariella was still asleep in her bed. No name, no sender, just her name written in capital letters. Inside, a photo, grainy, black and white. Samantha standing in front of a gallery, months ago, smiling, alone. On the back, a handwritten message. "You don't belong in her world. You never will." That was it. No signature, no threat. But the chill it left in her spine was enough to make her drop it. Samantha didn't tell Ariella immediately. She hid it in a drawer. Told herself it was probably someone bored, someone bitter, someone irrelevant. But it haunted her. Every time Ariella kissed her forehead. Every time she woke up in the warmth of her arms. Every time they talked about what came next. The second envelope came 3 days later. This time, delivered directly to the gallery Samantha sometimes volunteered at. Another photo. Her and Ariella at the coffee shop from weeks ago. Their first real moment. Smiling. Close. Intimate. The message on the back was sharper this time. "She's not safe with you. You'll be the thing that ruins her." Samantha's hands shook as she read it. This time she didn't hide it. She went straight home, heart pounding, and waited for Ariella to return. When she did, coat in hand, hair swept back from a long day of pretending not to be exhausted, Samantha held the envelope out to her silently. Ariella read it. Her face didn't change, but something inside her did. "How long have these been coming?" "This is the second." "The first?" "4 days ago." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to worry. Because I thought maybe it was nothing." Ariella shook her head. "Nothing leaves handwriting like this." She pulled out her phone, called someone fast, direct. "Security."
"Now."
Full sweep. Quietly. Then she turned to Samantha. "I'm sorry. I should have seen this coming. It's not your fault." "It is. I brought you into this. I chose this, Ariella. I chose you." Ariella looked like she wanted to believe that, but the edge in her eyes said otherwise. That night, security swept the apartment. New locks were installed. Ariella insisted Samantha sleep at her penthouse again, just until things felt safe. Samantha agreed, but only because she saw the panic hiding behind Ariella's calm. The next week was quiet. No new letters. No photos. Just tension. Ariella became more protective, never letting Samantha walk alone, having her picked up and dropped off even for short errands. Samantha bristled at it but didn't argue. She understood. But the fear was beginning to spread. Then the third envelope came. It was slipped into Ariella's office. Left on her desk. This time, there was no photo. Just one sentence, typed in bold. "You can keep pretending, Ariella. But everyone sees what this is." No threat. But that didn't matter. Because someone had walked past security. Past cameras. Past locked doors. Someone wanted to be seen. Ariella locked the office that day. She canceled meetings. She went home early. And when Samantha asked what scared her most, she didn't talk about the letters. She said, "What if they make you afraid of me?" Samantha took her face in both hands. Never. Even if I bring danger into your life? You didn't bring it. You just refuse to hide from it. What if loving me hurts you? Then we bleed together. Ariella kissed her like she was holding onto the only thing left keeping her from breaking. And Samantha kissed her back like she was willing to be broken if it meant staying. That night, Ariella made a decision. She didn't tell Samantha what it was. But she stood at the window long after Samantha had fallen asleep, phone in hand, voice low and sharp. "Find them," she said. "I don't care what it takes. I want a name."
Pause.
"And if they ever come near her again, I swear to God, I will end them myself." Outside, the city moved like it always did. Indifferent.
Busy. Alive.
But inside that penthouse, two women slept in the same bed, holding onto each other like war was coming, and they were ready to fight side by side. The name came 2 days later. Ariella received the file in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered by her most trusted security advisor. Inside were surveillance photos, background reports, old messages cross-referenced with new ones. It all led back to one name: Olivia Kent, the ex-girlfriend of a former board member. A woman Ariella hadn't seen in almost 4 years. Someone she'd forgotten, but someone who hadn't forgotten her. Olivia had once been part of Ariella's circle, briefly, seductively, manipulatively. She had loved power. She had whispered in the right ears, smiled in the right rooms, and when Ariella cut her out, when she refused to play Olivia's games anymore, Olivia vanished. Or so she thought. Now she was back. And she wasn't after money or control. She wanted humiliation. For Ariella to crumble in the eyes of the world. And she had chosen Samantha as her weapon. Ariella stared at the file, at the photos of Olivia's brownstone, of her slipping envelopes into doors herself in the dead of night, always careful, always covered. Rage built in her chest like a storm. This wasn't business. This was personal. And the one person she loved most was being used as leverage. She stood, grabbed her coat, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't send anyone else. She went herself. Samantha was painting when Ariella arrived at the apartment. Her hands were covered in shades of gold and crimson, her hair tied messily, a streak of yellow on her cheek. She looked peaceful, safe. Ariella hated what she had to do next. "I found out who's been sending the letters," she said quietly. Samantha froze. Her brush hovered mid-stroke.
"Who?" "Someone from my past."
"Olivia Kent." Samantha turned slowly, eyes guarded. "I don't know that name." "You wouldn't. It was before everything. Before the company became what it is. She wanted access to the board, to my inner circle. She used charm, rumors, manipulation, until I cut her off. She's been holding a grudge ever since. And now she's using me to get to you." "Yes." "What are you going to do?" Ariella hesitated. "I'm going to confront her." "With what? Evidence? Threats?" "With truth." Samantha stood, wiping her hands on a rag. "Then I'm going with you." "No, yes. It's not safe. It's my face in those pictures. My name in those letters. I deserve to look her in the eye." Ariella saw the fire in Samantha's expression and knew there was no use arguing. They went together. Olivia's brownstone was pristine. White stone, perfect steps, a red door that looked like it had been chosen just to say I'm not like everyone else. Samantha's heart pounded as they approached. Ariella knocked once.
"Come."
Controlled. Olivia opened the door herself. She hadn't aged much. Still sleek. Still smug. But the moment her eyes landed on Samantha, her expression faltered. "Oh," she said, smiling too wide. "So it's true. You're real." "I'm very real," Samantha said evenly. "And I'm done being your punching bag." Olivia's gaze slid to Ariella. "Bringing her here? That's brave. Or foolish." "You don't get to speak to her," Ariella said coldly. "Not after what you've done." "What I've done?" Olivia laughed. "I sent a few notes. Nothing violent. Nothing threatening. You invaded our lives. I reminded you of who you used to be, before you went soft." Ariella stepped forward. "I'm not soft. I'm in love." There's a difference. Olivia's smile died. You used to be smarter than this. I used to be alone. Now I'm not. And you can't stand it. Olivia folded her arms. What do you want? An apology? I want you to stay the hell away from us. And I want you to know that if I see your shadow near Samantha again, I'll make sure your name disappears from every room that ever mattered to you. Olivia's eyes narrowed. You threatening me? No, Ariella said. I'm promising you. The air thickened. Samantha stood her ground, watching the woman who had tried to dismantle her from the shadows. Olivia glanced at her one last time. She won't survive you. She'll learn. Samantha's voice was sharp.
No, you did.
And you hated it. Ariella took her hand, and together they turned and walked away. Back outside, back into the wind, back into the world that still didn't know what to do with two women who refused to fall apart. That night, they didn't celebrate. There was no victory toast. No champagne. Just quiet. The quiet of aftermath. Of decisions made. Of battles faced and survived. Ariella lay in bed with her arm draped over Samantha's stomach, her cheek pressed against her skin. She was right about one thing, she whispered. Samantha tensed. What? I'm not the same woman I was before you. Is that a bad thing? Ariella looked up, her voice softer now. It's the only thing I've ever been grateful to lose. Samantha kissed her, slow, tender. Not to fix, not to claim. Just to feel. They fell asleep with the windows open. No alarms. No panic. For the first time in weeks, Samantha dreamed in color again. And Ariella didn't wake up with her fists clenched. The storm had passed. But the sky still carried the weight of everything they'd survived. And that, they knew, was love. The gallery was small, but the room felt impossibly wide the night of the exhibit. Samantha stood alone at the center, surrounded by her work. Pieces born from grief, love, rage, surrender. The canvas Ariella had given her, the one she'd once handed over blank, was now framed in the center wall. Painted in strokes of gold and black, deep crimson layered into subtle textures, it carried no title. But those who looked at it felt something immediate. Like falling. Like fire. Like being seen. The event was packed. Critics, artists, reporters, strangers who'd seen her name online and came out of curiosity, but stayed in awe.
Her palms were sweaty.
Her heart wouldn't stop racing. But she didn't shake. Not tonight. Not anymore. Ariella hadn't arrived yet. Samantha had looked for her the moment she stepped into the space, scanning every corner, every silhouette. But she wasn't there. Still, something in her heart told her she would come. That she had to come. The night wore on.
People clapped.
Speeches were made. Samantha said a few words at the mic, brief, grateful, deeply personal. She thanked Gina, who stood near the back with tearful pride. She thanked the gallery. And then, without naming her, she thanked someone who reminded me that being seen is not the same as being consumed. People applauded. But Samantha wasn't listening to them. Her eyes were still on the door. Waiting.
Hoping. Dreading.
And then, just when she was starting to think maybe she'd been wrong, Ariella walked in. Wearing no black. No armor. No sleek CEO mask. She wore cream and silver, soft fabrics, no heels, and no entourage. Her hair was curled at the ends. Her eyes searched the room until they found Samantha's. And in them, Samantha saw it, the apology.
The awe.
The fear. The love. Ariella crossed the room slowly, not caring who stared. She stood in front of Samantha with her hands in her coat pockets, like a woman trying to stand still while everything inside her shook. You made it, Samantha whispered. I told you I would. I wasn't sure. I was. Ariella pulled something from her coat. Not a letter.
Not a gift.
A small, weathered photograph. Samantha frowned. What is that? Ariella handed it over. It was from the night of their blind date. That moment, the first time their eyes met across the restaurant. Someone had snapped it without them noticing. Security caught it by accident. I've had it ever since. Why did you bring it tonight? Ariella's voice softened. Because I realized something. You looked lonely, but you didn't look broken. You looked brave. And I didn't know then that you'd change everything for me. But I look at that picture now, and I see the moment my life started. Samantha couldn't speak. Her throat closed. I love you, Ariella continued, voice raw. And I want to stop running from that. I want to stop hiding it. I want to stop fighting against the only thing that's ever made me feel whole. You're not hiding it, Samantha whispered. Not anymore. I want more than just not hiding, Ariella said. I want building. I want messy mornings and gallery nights and arguments about coffee brands and weekends that aren't scheduled in Outlook. I want to love you in every version of life. Even the hard ones, especially those. Samantha looked at the photograph again, then back at Ariella. I'm scared. So am I. But you're still here. And I'm not going anywhere. Slowly, carefully, Samantha reached into her bag and pulled something out. A tiny, paint-stained envelope. I was going to wait. Maybe next week. Maybe next month. But I think this moment is ours. She handed it to Ariella. Ariella opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a single slip of paper. Do you want to share the rest of this life with me? Ariella's eyes filled with tears. Is this? It's not a ring, Samantha said quickly. Not yet. Just a question. One I couldn't ask until I was sure we'd survived. Ariella looked at her, completely undone. Yes, she whispered. God, yes. The crowd clapped. Someone had overheard. Then others joined. But neither of them cared. They didn't look away from each other. Not once. Later that night, after the exhibit closed, after goodbyes were exchanged and lights were dimmed, they walked home through the city hand in hand. No car. No driver. Just the sidewalk and the wind, and the sound of their laughter. Ariella took off her shoes halfway, walking barefoot with Samantha's heels in her other hand. This is ridiculous, she muttered. You're ridiculous. You love it. I do. When they reached the apartment, Samantha opened the door. Ariella walked in first, then paused. This place, it's still so small. I like it small. Why? Because it makes it easier to feel when someone's missing. Ariella turned around slowly. I'm not going to be missing again. Then come in. And stay.
She did.
And she stayed. Through hard days and brilliant ones. Through quiet mornings and chaotic nights. Through board meetings, new exhibits, loss and laughter. Through everything. Samantha never had to ask again. Because Ariella answered her every day with hands, with words, with presence. And Samantha answered back. Not by changing who she was, but by choosing love even when it scared her. 2 women. 1 city. A love that started with a blind date and $20. A CEO and an artist. Power and passion. Fire and grounding. And, finally, a future neither of them had been brave enough to dream until they found it in each other. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.